One of the most surprising things about people with strong narcissistic traits is this. Many of them do not truly recognize your worth until you are completely out of reach. Only when every door closes and every form of access disappears do they begin to experience the weight of what they lost. The longer your silence continues, the more their thoughts can shift in ways they never imagined. Today, we are going to explore what often happens inside a narcissistic mind after a long period of no contact. If this video is helping you understand these behaviors more clearly, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your experience in the comments. Your story could be the reason someone else finally understands what they have been dealing with for so long. Long-term no contact removes something that many narcissistic personalities quietly depend on every single day. It takes away emotional influence. That influence is not always obvious. It is not always loud fights, harsh words, or obvious manipulation. Sometimes it hides in very small moments. It can be as simple as believing they can send you a message whenever they choose, and knowing you will eventually answer. It can be the comfort of believing your emotions are still connected to them, or assuming they still hold a special place in your thoughts, even after weeks or months apart. That emotional connection gives them a feeling of security and control. They may ignore you, disappear without explanation, treat you poorly, or seem emotionally distant, yet still believe they can return at any moment and affect your emotions. Then everything changes. You stop responding. You stop reaching out. You stop reacting. You quietly move forward with your own life. That single decision changes the emotional balance completely. Stay with me because what happens next reveals far more than most people ever realize. When no contact continues for a long time, something begins to happen beneath the surface. The narcissist can no longer predict your behavior. They no longer know whether you still think about them, whether you still miss them, or whether they have become nothing more than a memory. That uncertainty creates deep discomfort, because control often acts like emotional protection for them. When control disappears, they are forced to face questions they normally avoid. Your silence becomes evidence that their influence is fading. They cannot measure your emotions anymore. They cannot tell if their absence still hurts you, or if someone else has already taken their place. That lack of information can become emotionally exhausting. It often leads to unexpected reactions. Some become frustrated and angry. Others suddenly appear kind, warm, and caring, after showing little interest before. Some begin looking for indirect ways to pull your attention back toward them. They may watch your social media from a distance, ask mutual friends about your life, or create situations where you might notice them again. Every action may look different on the outside, but underneath there is often one common reason. They are trying to regain the emotional certainty they once believed they had. And here is something important to remember. Their reaction is not always proof of love. Sometimes it is simply a response to losing access to someone they thought would always remain available. Keep watching because the next part explains why silence can become more powerful than any argument you could ever have. As time passes, your silence begins to tell a story that no words could ever explain. Every day without a response slowly changes the picture inside their mind. At first, they may believe you will return like before. They may expect you to break the silence first, apologize, or reopen the conversation. When that does not happen, confidence slowly gives way to confusion. Confusion can turn into frustration. Frustration can eventually become obsession. The less they know about your life, the more space their imagination begins to fill. They start wondering where you are, who you spend time with, and whether you have completely moved on. They replay old conversations. They question moments they once ignored. They search for signs they missed while taking your presence for granted. This does not happen because they suddenly become deeply self-aware. It often happens because certainty has disappeared. Your silence removes the predictable pattern they once relied on. Instead of controlling the emotional distance between you, they now have no idea what is happening on your side. That loss of certainty can be deeply uncomfortable. Some narcissistic personalities react by trying to recreate contact through unexpected messages, emotional apologies, or sudden memories of happier times. Others refuse to reach out directly but constantly look for ways to stay connected from a distance. Either way, the silence keeps growing stronger because it cannot be argued with, manipulated, or negotiated. And that is exactly why long no contact often changes the emotional dynamic more than endless conversations ever could. The next insight may completely change the way you see their behavior. Your silence slowly begins to create something many narcissistic personalities struggle to handle. It creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is uncomfortable for someone who depends on emotional control to feel secure. When you stop responding, stop reacting, and stop giving them emotional access, they lose the information they once relied on. They no longer know whether you still miss them, whether you still think about them every day, or whether you have completely moved on with your life. That missing information becomes louder with every passing day. Narcissistic personalities often measure their importance through your emotional reactions. It does not always matter whether those emotions are love, anger, sadness, disappointment, or frustration. Any strong reaction reminds them they still have influence over you. As long as they can affect your emotions, they believe they still hold a place in your life. But long-term no contact removes those signals completely. Suddenly, they are left with questions instead of answers. They wonder if you found peace without them. They wonder if someone else has become important in your life. They wonder if they have finally lost the control they once believed would never disappear. This uncertainty slowly becomes emotionally exhausting because situations they cannot predict often create deep discomfort. Even if they act confident on the outside, their mind may keep searching for explanations. Your silence quietly challenges the image they built about themselves. Many truly believe people never stop thinking about them. That belief begins to crack when weeks or months pass without hearing from you. This is why some eventually return with unexpected messages, sudden concern, emotional apologies, or small attempts to reopen communication. Stay with me because what happens next explains why silence often speaks louder than any argument ever could. One of the first ways many narcissistic personalities protect themselves is by pretending they are completely unaffected. When no contact begins, they may feel the loss much sooner than people realize, but showing pain or confusion feels dangerous to them. Instead of admitting they are struggling, they often hide behind confidence, emotional distance, or a cold attitude. Protecting their image becomes more important than showing their true feelings. That is why some suddenly appear happier than ever. They may post constantly on social media, show exciting moments, display a new relationship, or act as if life has become perfect overnight. To anyone watching, it may seem like they moved on without a second thought. But in many situations, this behavior is more about protecting their image than finding real peace. They want people to believe nothing has affected them. Sometimes they even try to convince themselves of the same story. This false confidence can also become another emotional strategy. If they appear completely unbothered, they may hope you begin questioning your own decision. They may expect you to feel jealous, rejected, guilty, or tempted to contact them first. They understand emotional reactions very well and often know how to create doubt without saying much at all. Real peace usually feels quiet, steady, and natural. Fake indifference often feels dramatic, forced, and strangely loud. The harder someone works to prove they do not care, the more likely it is that your silence has reached them far deeper than they are willing to admit. Keep watching, because the next behavior surprises many people who thought the story was already over. As more time passes without contact, some narcissistic personalities begin looking for ways back into your life. Losing emotional access can feel like losing control, and that feeling becomes difficult for them to ignore. They can no longer predict your choices, influence your emotions, or depend on your availability. Instead of accepting that reality, they often search for ways to reopen the connection. Sometimes they return with soft words and unexpected kindness. They may suddenly apologize, say they miss you, speak about changing, or express emotions they rarely showed before. Other times they choose guilt instead. They remind you of old memories, difficult moments you shared together, or sacrifices they claim they made for you. They may reach out on birthdays, holidays, or meaningful dates because those moments can lower emotional defenses. Sudden affection is another common pattern. Someone who once seemed distant, cold, or emotionally unavailable may suddenly become caring, attentive, and deeply expressive. That dramatic change can easily create hope that everything is finally different. But many times the real goal is not building a healthier relationship. It is regaining emotional access and confirming they still have the power to affect your feelings. Once that connection returns, the familiar patterns often begin to appear again, little by little. Even when direct communication completely stops, curiosity about your life may continue. They may quietly watch your social media, ask mutual friends about you, or look for indirect ways to learn what is happening in your world. They may not speak to you directly, but they still want awareness, information, and the reassurance that they have not completely disappeared from your thoughts. And that silent search often reveals far more than they ever intended anyone to see. Even when all direct communication ends, their curiosity often stays alive. Silence may stop the conversations, but it does not always stop the need to know what is happening in your life. Many narcissistic personalities find it very difficult to accept having no control at all. Because of that, they often look for quiet and indirect ways to keep track of your emotions, your healing, your relationships, and the progress you are making without ever admitting they are still paying attention. Social media becomes one of the easiest places for this. Some repeatedly visit your profile, watch every story you post, react to something from months ago, or somehow appear online whenever you are active. Others choose an even quieter approach by using anonymous or fake accounts so they can observe your life without revealing themselves. Behind this behavior is often one simple goal. They want to know if they still have an emotional effect on you. They search for signs that you are still hurting, still thinking about them, or still emotionally attached. Even the smallest clue can feel important to them because it reassures them that they still occupy space in your world. Mutual friends and family members can also become unexpected sources of information. They may casually ask about you, mention your name during normal conversations, or quietly collect updates while pretending they have no real interest. On the outside, they may appear completely indifferent, yet behind the scenes, they continue searching for answers. Pay close attention, because the next part explains why this behavior is usually connected to control far more than genuine love. One of the hardest realities for many narcissistic personalities is realizing that your life can continue peacefully without them. That realization often affects their ego much more deeply than the breakup itself. For many of them, relationships are closely connected to validation, attention, admiration, and emotional influence, rather than a balanced emotional bond. As long as they could reach you, receive your reactions, or know they still mattered in your emotional world, they felt secure. Even negative attention could satisfy that need, because it confirmed they still had influence. But when no contact continues for a long time, that emotional supply slowly disappears. They stop receiving your responses. They no longer know what is happening in your life. They lose the reassurance that you are still emotionally connected to them. This creates a painful blow to the image they have built about themselves. The discomfort usually comes less from losing true closeness and much more from losing the feeling of importance, relevance, and emotional control. That is why some people suddenly become desperate to reconnect after being the very ones who acted distant, cold, or emotionally harmful during the relationship. Your silence forces them to face something they have been trying to avoid. They can no longer shape your emotions the way they once believed they could. Beneath the confident image they show the world often hides a very fragile sense of self-worth. When emotional access disappears, one of the mirrors they use to feel important disappears with it. And for many, watching you genuinely move forward becomes more painful than the ending of the relationship itself. Keep watching, because the next reaction often surprises people the most. As your silence continues, some narcissistic personalities begin showing open frustration because they can no longer control your reactions. Losing emotional influence can feel deeply upsetting to someone who has always depended on other people's responses to feel powerful. Throughout the relationship, they may have created love, guilt, fear, confusion, or emotional chaos, but every reaction served the same purpose. It reminded them they still had influence. As long as you explained yourself, defended your choices, chased after them, argued back, or became emotionally overwhelmed, they felt connected to a position of control. But everything changes when you stop participating in that cycle. You no longer answer every message. You no longer try to prove your point. You no longer give them the emotional response they expect. That silence removes the fuel they once depended on. Some react by becoming angry. Others become passive-aggressive, spread rumors, make indirect comments, or suddenly appear where they know they might be noticed. A few may even create unnecessary drama simply to see if you will respond. The specific behavior may change from person to person, but the goal often remains the same. They want proof that they can still affect your emotions. When that proof never arrives, frustration can grow stronger because they are forced to accept something they never expected. Your peace is no longer controlled by their actions, and that realization quietly shifts the balance of power in a way they cannot easily ignore. That is exactly why long-term silence often becomes the strongest message you never have to say out loud. Long-term no contact completely breaks the pattern they once depended on. Your silence removes the emotional feedback they had become used to receiving. Suddenly, their messages receive no reply. Their attempts to trigger your emotions stop working. The guilt trips, dramatic behavior, unexpected apologies, or attention-seeking actions no longer create the response they expected. For many narcissistic personalities, this creates deep frustration because they are no longer directing the emotional flow of the relationship. Over time, that frustration can grow into visible anger. Some may send harsh messages, spread false stories, become passive-aggressive, or try to damage your reputation with other people. Others may act cold, sarcastic, or openly dismissive in the hope that something will finally make you react. The anger often comes from a wounded ego instead of genuine heartbreak. Your emotional distance quietly challenges the belief that they could always return whenever they wanted and still affect you. What makes this so important is that calm silence feels unfamiliar to them. Emotional conflict is something they understand because even arguments keep the connection alive. Silence does the opposite. Silence closes the door without shouting. And when they finally realize they can no longer control your emotions like before, that loss of influence may create resentment they struggle to hide. Keep watching because the next part explains why your silence changes you far more than it changes them. As no contact continues, something even more powerful begins happening inside you. At first, many people enter no contact carrying pain, confusion, anxiety, and emotional attachment. Every day feels difficult. Every memory feels heavy. Every moment brings the temptation to reach out one last time. But when you remain consistent, a quiet transformation begins. The emotional dependence slowly fades. The constant need for answers becomes weaker. The desire for validation, explanations, or closure no longer controls your thinking. Little by little, a different kind of confidence starts growing. It is not loud or arrogant. It does not need attention. It appears through inner peace, emotional stability, stronger boundaries, and the ability to stay calm even when challenged. You stop organizing your life around someone else's changing moods or unpredictable behavior. Instead, you begin rebuilding the parts of yourself that were slowly pushed aside during the relationship. You reconnect with your interests, your friendships, your goals, and your own identity. Even from a distance, that change becomes noticeable. Narcissistic personalities are often very aware when someone no longer reacts the same way. They notice when you stop chasing, stop explaining yourself, and stop looking for their approval. Your quiet independence becomes proof that their influence is disappearing. And that realization can be deeply uncomfortable. This is often why some suddenly reappear just when you are finally moving forward. Stay with me, because the final truth may be the most important lesson of all. In the end, long-term no contact is not about punishment, revenge, or making someone regret losing you. It is about ending a cycle that kept your emotions tied to another person's control. That is why silence often creates such strong reactions. It removes access. It removes certainty. It removes the predictable emotional responses they once depended on to feel important and in control. Some respond with fake confidence. Others come back with sudden affection, emotional promises, guilt, or new attempts to reconnect. Some become angry. Some quietly watch your life from a distance. Some continue searching for signs that they still matter to you. Yet beneath many of these different reactions is the same uncomfortable reality. They are facing the possibility that they no longer have control over your emotional world. While they struggle with losing that influence, something remarkable is happening inside you. You are healing. You are becoming stronger. You are learning what real peace feels like when your emotions are no longer controlled by someone else's unpredictable behavior. That is the true strength of no contact. It is not about proving your value. It is not about making someone chase you. It is about reclaiming your freedom and remembering your worth without needing anyone else's approval. Sometimes the strongest decision you will ever make is to quietly keep moving forward without waiting for someone to finally understand what they lost. Trust the journey, trust your healing, and above all, trust yourself. Because every peaceful step you take away from unhealthy patterns brings you closer to the life you truly deserve.